Hi, friends and family,
Welcome to Hope After Addiction
with your hosts, Katie Comer.
and Chelsea McLeod. Hi, friends and family. We're so glad you're here today. Nice to have you. We have a super special guest today.
Yes.
Her name is Alex. She's beautiful inside and out and hilarious. It's fun. I was just thinking, actually, John had called to pray with me on the way to work this morning, on the way here this morning. And I was just thinking about, because he prayed for you, and I was like, it's been so cool to watch you. Like through the years, I'm like, she's here, like talking about her healing and what God's done. And it's just cool to watch the women that we walk through this with grow and heal, and like you're here today, and it's so cool. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Yes. And we were just talking about on our last podcast, we talked about healing, and everybody's journey is so different. And we're talking about when we have like a big group of like alumni or big like galas or fundraisers, and we see like stories like yours, or everybody's story so different, but just all the healing and the journeys that have taken place. It's just so beautiful. And so you're here to share your journey and to give hope. No, but like for real, like you're something that you say that somebody's listening to might resonate with them. That's something that we never have thought about to say. And they just grab a hold of that. And it's just so unique. So I'm just so thankful that you're here to share your story. I don't know you well, but I know a little bit about your story. So I'm excited to hear more about your story and your journey, and just to get to know you better too. So that's exciting.
Yes. No, I'm excited to be here and very blessed and honored to be sharing. I feel like what happens with God, will use it, and it's all for God's glory.
Amen.
And I hope that the things that I say are for God's good and not for myself, and so that the people hear what they need to hear. So
good. I love it.
Okay, we're gonna take it back. There's a lot to this story. I told them earlier I could be here for hours, but I'm gonna try to give the Cliff Notes version, a little bit. But I would say grew up, I would say in the church a little bit. I went to a Catholic school, Christian school. But I would say like my parents were involved in church. I like believed in Jesus probably my whole life. Like I believed in God my whole life, but I did not have a personal relationship with Jesus. Like I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know that was a thing. I just believed in him and knew he existed. And it was just not that deep is like how I would put it. But always knew of him, and believed to the extent that I guess I could at the time. And I would say things in my life, kind of fast forwarding a little bit, jumping into when I was about 11 years old. My dad, whose also name is Clayton, daddy issues, my husband's name is Clayton. But so there's that. My dad had an addiction off and on since I was 11 years old. And my dad was like my Superman. He was like my favorite person in the entire world. He could do no wrong. And I felt like at that 11 years old, I kind of realized like my parents were imperfect. My parents were not superhuman. And I felt like a hole in my heart. Like, I think that's kind of when it started, in like a loneliness and a gap, insecurity, so much abandonment, and just like feelings of like not being good enough. Why does my dad leave? Why does he say he's going to be literally coming down the street and never picks me up? It's just, I don't know. I don't think I was like relying on God in that time. Like I remember praying here and there, but again, I wasn't like filling that hole in my heart with God. But he was always, working behind the scenes and was speaking to me along the way, but I wasn't fully letting him in or surrendered at all at that time. Went off and on with that since I was little, and again, like I have a lot of empathy for addiction because he's one of my favorite people today, and he's got the best heart. As you guys know, like really good people can do really bad things, and it's hard to witness and it's hard to see. But about when I was I think 22, I met Clayton, and I was a smitten kid. And when it comes to Clayton, I was like kind of like a nerdy girl in high school, in the sense of like wasn't super popular, wasn't like, I had little groups of friends and pockets everywhere. But like Clayton, everybody knew who he was. Like he lit up any room he walked into, and I am not a shy person, if y'all can't tell. And the first time I met Clayton, I like literally could not speak. Like I was taken aback by this man. I was so intimidated by him. He was like, I was obsessed with him, obsessed. So basically, when I met Clayton, I did not know that Clayton had an addiction problem. He was very good at like keeping that tucked away for a little bit. By the time I found out that he did, I was already in there, and I got in the mode of like, I'm gonna fix him. I'm gonna help him. I can take this on. This can be my thing. And that started a journey. We've been together for 11 years now, married for almost 2 in the 29th of this month. God bless. And basically, I would say in that first like 2 years of like our dating life, I was more so fixated on Clayton than I was on God. I would pray, but again, I didn't think it was like God that could like fix all these things in Clayton. Like it's not that I doubted God. I don't know. I like really took a lot of control on it in myself. Like I was very codependent. I really took on Clayton's problem as my own. And I think obviously as spouses or somebody in a relationship, you're meant to help and support people along the way, but you're not meant to like literally, carry their weight for them, because we're not capable of carrying it. And I, for so many years, tried to do that. And like you were talking one of the other podcasts, just about like how you're, drowning, swimming in the ocean, trying to like let them float on the ship. And I did that for a long time. So first 2 years was like off and on in addiction. And then just some kind of like movement of location kind of happened. And I think that kind of changed things for Clayton in the sense of like gave him a little more strength of his own, in a sense, to try to be sober. And when I say that, like Clayton would still drink. Clayton would still once in a while have like a pill thing pop up, but he wasn't like doing his drug of choice for many, many years. So he was kind of like a dry drunk for a long time, for like 7 years, honestly. He wasn't happy. He didn't have peace. He didn't have joy. He didn't know if he wanted to get married. He was just very confused about like a lot of things, like a lot of confusion. And God is not a God of confusion. And so like just a lot of like attacks on his identity, attacks on like the things that he's been through. And it hurt a lot in our relationship, because I was trying to be the one to like pick him up and help him through and like lead him. And obviously like God doesn't call the wife to lead or the woman to lead in general. And things were just all out of whack, you know what I mean? In the sense of like the way we were walking. And we would sometimes go to church. But like, it was like that, checking a box on Sunday. Wow, this is for me. Like felt a good little message for the weekend. I feel better. But like, again, no personal intimacy, no like crazy like relationship with Jesus, no like miraculous healing, nothing like that, because we weren't either one of us like letting him in, like being the Lord of our life. Fast forward to 2020, COVID happened. Clayton relapsed behind my back. I didn't know. He got laid off. And so he wasn't working. Clayton does not do well, not working. Isolation does not work well. It didn't work well for me, but it definitely doesn't work well for him. Didn't know that happened. Just knew he was drinking a lot and just not doing the right things, and just like lost all like motivation, confidence, like really rough year in that sense. Fast forward a little bit to 2021. I believe it was beginning of 2021. Me, my mom, my sister took a girls' trip. It was the first time in 9 years I literally felt like comfortable leaving Clayton by himself for a weekend, for 3 days, okay, which is crazy. And that just shows you how much I was like, if I'm here, it's all going to be okay. If I'm here, I can control the situation. But lo and behold, that wasn't ever the case. And God was taking me on the journey to realize that. But I went on vacation, came back. A couple days later, Clayton and I got in an argument, and he just left the house like all night. And that was unlike him. And because it had been so long since he had like done like his drug of choice and like hard drugs, I genuinely didn't think that that's what was going on. Like when he left, I just was like, Clayton's mad, he's hothead, maybe he's blowing off steam and whatever. He comes back in the morning, he's like, you're going to want to sit down. And I was like, okay. And I literally was like, did you cheat on me? Like, what's happening? You know? But I really genuinely didn't think we were going there again, you know? And when I sat down, he was like, I got high last night. And I'm like, okay, like what'd you do? And then I found out it was his drug of choice. And I was like, whoa. And I was in such a state of shock. And I'm like, and honestly, I thought we got a hold on this. And again, it was like, we got a hold on this. Not like, you know, there was no surrendering to God. There was no peace in it. There was no joy. It it all hit me like, whoa, like I don't have much control in the situation, but again, try to take control. And from then it was just, 2021 was a rough year in the sense of like, I was not taking care of myself. Like I was trying, but it was just like, I got so little, like just hard time eating, anxiety ridden, initially. And then I got to this place where God started like really working on me because Clayton was so off and on, that I just started leaning into him, having like somewhat of like a personal relationship. But I think the Jesus piece like wasn't there for me fully. I don't know how to explain that, but like you can't know the Father until you know the Son. And I wasn't truly like knowing Jesus and who he was and like that he died on the cross for me. Like he thought of Alex, he thought of y'all, he thought of Clayton. Like it's just, that wasn't there, but God was like stirring my heart. And there were times where, I just started praying at night to God to protect Clayton. And he'd be gone for days. I wouldn't know if he's dead or alive. And like, just my, I was anxiety ridden. And the only thing that provided me any kind of peace is just to know that God's got him. And I just prayed for protection. And I realized like, I don't really have that much control, like I can support him, I can help him, I can pray for him, I can, be there to give him a helping hand, but like I'm not his savior. And I think for so long, honestly, I tried to take that on, and it actually was hindering God working on Clayton in some ways. And I didn't realize that I was doing that. And when I think about it, it like hurts my heart that I did in the sense of like kind of stepping into that and like almost blocking God because I helped pick Clayton up so many times, but I didn't help save him. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I might have helped him and I, helped get him out of situations. And honestly, a lot of times I probably shouldn't have, it's the enabling aspect and we've all done it. But fast forward a little bit more, going into, I think end of 2021, Clayton went to a secular rehab. Went there for like 30 days. When he got out, like a week after, it was just back to the races. Nothing changed. For a while, he had tried to do like the meetings and this and that. But again, I think he really had a hard time accepting that I am an addict. Like that is my identity. Like he didn't align with it, but like he didn't know what else to do in the sense of like, what else do you seek? Like he did not know that, you can have freedom in Christ. Like that was just not. And honestly, like God did stir on Clayton the entire time in his addiction as well. Like things that like when I have seen Clayton and like Clayton was not there. Like I felt like it was like literally almost like, it's almost like modern day possession to me, like addiction. It's like they are no longer there. And I think like literally the only times where he would have any kind of like moment of like any kind of like heart change or like feeling that wasn't like sorrow or shame or guilt or wanting to relapse or get high was like when I talked about God or when he read something or just like when he was praying, like he would have slow little tiny breakthroughs. Like God was like stirring up on him for so long. Like God was like literally like gave Clayton every like knock on the door that he could get, but Clayton just was like keeping that door shut for so long, like locked, bolted, whatever he needed to do to not let God like fully in. Like he didn't want to give it up. Like he wanted to keep running. And then it got really bad in like the end of 2021. Just terrible. Like Clayton would be at work. He had a very physical job, like in the elevators, like in an elevator union. And he was like falling asleep on like an escalator, like working or in an elevator, like very, very dangerous situations. But also something that was a problem, I think, is that because Clayton does not, like I think people have a stereotype of what addiction or an addict or like this and that kind of person look like. Sure. And let me tell you, it doesn't look like anybody you think it looks like. It could be anybody. It could be a mom. It could be a dad. It could be a daughter or a sister. It doesn't matter. An athlete. It doesn't matter. Like addiction has no type per se, right? Its type is the lost. Its type is the people that don't have identity in God. And Clayton kept getting so many chances with work, like just like kept taking him back and like just didn't like understand. Like I was just like, it was mind boggling because it was hurting him as well. Like they kept helping him and it stopped him from getting help, like true help and true like peace. And just, he never got to hit rock bottom. Like he never did, for a long time, because like everybody would like help him get out of like the pit he was going into. And it's funny because now I literally pray for like the weight of people's sin to crush them, because to be crushed and not to stay there, but to allow God to show you the weight of your sin and to become a new creation in him and transform your heart and like let it all go to him. And it's funny because it's just where I was then and where I am now is just wild. But talking about Clayton finally got into S2L. His sister found S2L. It was such a God thing in general. His sister talked to Travis, and Travis was it was my husband's sister, Natalie. She was the first call that Travis took talking about Clayton. So it was like even like just a special thing with that. And just he spoke so much life into her. And I remember like when they do the intake, Clayton has to also talk to Travis. And I remember like everything in him was like it was just almost like the enemy just had such a grip on him, was like hated to hear what he had to say. And like while he was literally on the phone with Travis was like, "Can I pray for you?" And just Clayton just like bawled, and like was already starting to like let things go in a sense, and like kind of slowly start to surrender, like peel things off. And while all this is happening for Clayton, and this is something I thought about sharing, is that like I saw like what God was doing in Clayton's life a lot, but I times didn't know or see like what he was doing in my life. Like I kind of thought I was like a part of Clayton's story. I'm like a byproduct of Clayton's story, but like that healing is for Clayton. Like that promise and like these things that, he learned, it's all for Clayton. And it's like, I don't really have much for God to take from me. I'm fine. I'm normal. You know what I mean? But I realized, just again, like throughout that whole time, the only thing that I had was God. The only stability, the only peace and comfort, was him throughout the whole time. And again, I wasn't at a surrendered place yet, but I was slowly being stirred to get there. Right. And, when Clayton went to S2L, went through the program, I will never forget the first time I saw him. And now, mind you, I was very angry. Your girl was mad, okay? Because he had hurt me. He had broke my heart. And it's such a hopeless feeling to like love somebody so much and like be able to do nothing to help them. But also there is like a peace in knowing you can do nothing to truly help them, right? It's like this, it's hard, but it's also knowing like it's in God's hands and we don't have that kind of power to save them, right? Yeah. And the first time I saw him at S2L after we hadn't seen each other for, I think it was like phase 1, like 42 days or something. I'd been talking to him on the phone a little bit and he sounded like very like different. And I was like, who is this man? And like, what have you done to my husband? Like, I don't believe this. And I saw him at the Experience Church the first time we met. They were going there for like a Saturday night service. And when I saw him, like, I'm not joking when I tell you, like his eyes just changed. Like the heaviness was like lifted from him. And like, I was like, who are you? And I could just literally, he was radiating peace and he was radiating joy. And I was like, what is this? What is that? And he was like, it's Jesus. And it was very confusing to me because I was like, I know Jesus. What do you mean I believe in him? What are you talking about? We've always, and he's like, but like not to, like you have not surrendered to him basically. Right. And I didn't understand it. And then like, it really took a while for me to fully understand what that means. And I daily try to die to myself and it's hard. It's a daily surrender, right? But our story is very interesting. Like, I mean, for 9 years we dated. And finally he had a come to Jesus moment at S2L where he's like, you know what? Like I want to get married and like I want to have walk in a godly way with you. And we changed the way we were living our relationship prior to like trying to walk with the Lord, to be obedient to him and his ways and like what he desired of us. And I feel like God has done so much. I don't have enough time in this short session. You guys would be off of here by now. But to talk about it all, but he has just done like, I mean, he has took us through miracle after blessing. And it's been like valleys and mountains along the way, but like God has revealed himself to me and shown me who he is in such a much deeper way by knowing like God's always got me. God at the end of the day, is the one true thing that I can count on, and he can give me peace that literally doesn't make sense. And I highlighted this in the Bible because this verse is really impactful for me. And it's funny because before I even knew the verse or like where to find this in the Bible, like I knew the verse. Like I had heard it somewhere, like a piece of it. And like throughout that time period in my life where I was going through like the pits of my darkness and like alone and just devastation, this like verse would come to my mind before I even knew the full verse. So I'm going to read it if that's cool, just to kind of hopefully share it with somebody that it's going to help as well. And it is Philippians 4:6-9. Don't worry about anything, but in everything, through prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any moral excellence, and if there is anything praiseworthy, dwell on these things. Do what you have learned and received and heard from me and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. But like when I said I could sleep through the night with Clayton being gone and literally didn't know if my person I was madly in love with is dead or alive, that was God. The only way I could do it. Like people would ask me how I was okay, and I'm like, God? I don't know, I don't know, but just through the different times that he had, it's been a journey, you know what I mean? I think recovery isn't always necessarily linear all the time. There are bumps in the road, and Clayton has had his different experiences at S2L. Each time that he had gone through the phase, he shed more and more of himself, and like let God peel things away. Work was a big part of his identity. Him working at S2L was a huge thing because he held on to like this, like, I'm a physical working man. And honestly, it's crazy because I'm so like thankful for the things that I've been through. I wouldn't want to necessarily go through them again, but I am truly grateful for all the things that I've gone through. And if I hadn't seen the transformation that happened in Clayton, I wouldn't have fully understood like what Jesus can do. And it's up to whoever the person is to stay and walk in that, right? Like God can do that for you, but you have to stay and surrender to that daily. And Clayton didn't stay and surrender to that from that point on. It was an up and down battle, but the most recent time that he had come through the program was the first time he chose to come. The first time his sister took him. The second time I was like, you're going because we're getting married. Third time, he like fully surrendered and got alone with God. Like that's where the weight of his sin crushed him. There's this thing, and then I think that this is something I can kind of like talk more about later and whatnot. But I think that something I have learned throughout the whole thing is that, you're not in control. God is in control. God is a good God. He does not forsake you. You're not alone. And he is going to work all things for good. And it is crazy to look at my life, 2020, 2021, 2022, and be like, how did I get from there to here? And all things that I have that are good, any part of me that's good, any part of me that is, anything pleasant is of God. It is not on my own accord. And it's just, he has been like the transformer of my heart. He has given me peace that didn't make sense in absolute chaos and darkness. He's motivated me to like get up in days where I didn't want to get out of bed. And he's like, Alex, get to the gym. Like go do something for yourself. And it's like all this came from God. Like I could not have gotten through the things I've gotten through. There were so many days where I just like didn't want to be here anymore. There's so many days where I'm just like, I can't handle this. And God's like, yes, you can. And so I just, it would take me a lifetime to try to thank him or a lifetime to try to say all the things that he's done in my life. So it's probably all over the place. Mm-hmm. But I know that my husband would not be okay in the sense of like sobriety or walking in freedom if it wasn't for God. Clayton's tried everything. Clayton's literally tried everything and nothing has worked but God. And honestly, that is the only place to find freedom. And the freedom isn't just for them. It's also for us. Mm-hmm. And our history is always, I always think like our history, the things we've been through are for his story, right? It's like what we go through has a purpose and it's to help somebody else when we allow it to. And it's just getting to the other side. And sometimes the only way out is through. So I'm just thankful to God for just the life that I have today, what he's doing in me, what he's been doing in me this year. And he's just been taking me to new places. I used to never be comfortable even sharing these kind of things. And it's like, I wanted to hide in the shadows about it all. And it's like, it's Clayton's thing. It's like not my story, but God has done just as much for me as he's done for Clayton throughout it all. And I'm thankful for it all. It's weird. Like, I would not have the closeness and the intimacy with Jesus if it wasn't for the things that I've been through. So that's a little bit about a lot. So
that's a little bit about a lot. I love it. I do. I think that your story is so beautifully told in the way that, you know, yes, it's about your loved one, but how you put it back on how you have a journey too.
Yeah.
And you have a healing journey too. And how it's so easy to forget us. And that's why we created this podcast, because there's so many people that feel so lost in their loved one's addiction, and how God has really transformed you.
Oh yeah.
And how you could have so easily just forgotten about yourself. Oh yeah. And how God did not allow that to happen, but he also grew you in your journey. And I think that in and of itself is why we do this podcast. And I think for somebody listening to your story and saying, oh my goodness, I have forgotten about myself. I need to see where God's trying to redeem me and grow me. And so I appreciate you sharing that part of it too. Yeah. Yes, Clayton's story is his story, but you also have a story. And together y'all have a story together. And I just think that's so beautiful. And I know that when you were talking about his eyes were different when you first saw him after those 42 days. We always talk about that. And I know that for Adam, I remember even in his voice, when I first talked to him after 2 or 3 weeks, I think I talked to him, I was like, his voice sounds different.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And he was like, Katie, I don't know how else to explain it other than God captivated my heart. Like it just was a true captivation. And I'd always known God. And like you said, I'd always known he existed, but there was something that God in those 2 to 3 weeks really transformed his heart. Yeah. And so it was different. Right. And it's God.
Yeah.
So I thank you for sharing your story. I think we kind of like whispered to each other. I think your story is so important and just so real and raw. What we're going to do is we're going to ask you questions in a part 2. Okay. And so that way they can listen to this story, but we want you to come back for part 2. And we have about 4 or 5 questions that we're going to ask you. And we appreciate you so much for sharing the realness and the rawness of your story. So come back next week for part 2 for some of the questions we're going to ask Alex. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you next week. Yeah. Bye.